Dr. Dark One Scary Stories. Story 1. It was late, just past 2 a.m., and the road stretched out in front of me like a dark ribbon. I was coming back from a long shift and could barely keep my eyes open. The only sound was the hum of my engine and the occasional rattle of a passing truck. Then I saw him. He stood by the side of the road, his hand out, thumb extended, just like you'd see in old movies. He was wearing a hoodie that hid most of his face, but I could tell he was young. Maybe around my age. I hesitated. Picking up hitchhikers wasn't something I'd ever done, but he looked harmless enough. And honestly, I didn't want to be alone on that stretch of road anymore. I pulled over. The guy didn't say a word when he got in. He just nodded, pulled his hood down lower, and slumped into the seat. I tried to make small talk, asked him where he was headed, if he'd been waiting long, but he just shrugged. Something about him felt off. I couldn't put my finger on it, but the air in the car felt heavier. He smelled faintly of damp earth, like he'd been standing in the rain, but the night was clear. We drove in silence for what felt like forever. I glanced at the clock on my dashboard, 2:14 a.m., and then over at him, but he wasn't there. My heart nearly stopped. The seat was empty. I gripped the wheel tighter, my mind racing. Did he jump out? No, I hadn't heard the door open. I hadn't slowed down. He was just gone. Then I saw something in the rearview mirror. He was standing in the middle of the road, right in my headlights, grinning at me. But that wasn't possible. I hadn't stopped the car. I'd been driving the whole time. His grin stretched too wide, his teeth gleaming unnaturally in the dark. His hood was still up, but I could see his eyes now. Empty, dark sockets that seemed to swallow the light around them. I slammed on the brakes, but when I skidded to a stop and looked back, the road was empty. I didn't sleep that night. The image of his grin haunted me. The next day, I couldn't resist looking him up. Maybe I imagined it. Maybe he was just some drifter I'd dropped off and forgotten. But then I found an article from years ago about a young man who'd been hit by a car on that exact stretch of road while trying to hitchhike. The driver never stopped. The article included a photo of him. It was the same face I'd seen in my headlights, the same grin. And at the bottom of the article, the timestamp read 2:14 a.m. Story 2. It started as a normal drive home, a quiet night with just the hum of my engine and the faint glow of the dashboard lights to keep me company. I was tired, relying on my GPS to guide me through unfamiliar back roads after a detour. That's when it happened. The GPS chirped, "Turn left," so I did, onto a narrow road I hadn't noticed before. It was pitch black, no streetlights or houses in sight, just trees lining the edges like walls closing in. My gut told me something felt off, but I kept going. About 10 minutes in, I saw it. A figure stood in the middle of the road, barely visible in the weak beam of my headlights. They weren't moving, just standing there staring straight ahead. My heart raced as I slowed to a crawl, my palms slick on the wheel. I stopped the car, waiting for them to move, but they didn't. I couldn't make out any details, just a vague outline. I called out through the window, "Hey, are you okay?" Nothing. Then, in the blink of an eye, they were gone. Not walking away, not running into the trees, just gone. I felt a chill creep up my spine as I scanned the road ahead. I told myself I was tired, that my eyes were playing tricks on me. I was about to start driving again when I felt it, a soft breeze on my neck. The driver's side door was wide open. I whipped around, heart pounding, but the road was empty. My shaking hands reached out to pull the door shut, but then I heard it. A whisper, low and raspy, coming from behind me. "Keep driving." I didn't look back. I slammed the door, floored the gas, and tore down the road like my life depended on it. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of what just happened. The GPS stayed silent after that, and I didn't dare glance at the screen again. I drove until I finally saw a gas station, pulling in and jumping out of the car like it was on fire. I opened the backseat door, half expecting to see someone, or something, waiting there, but it was empty. I told the gas station clerk what happened, half laughing to cover how scared I really was. He looked at me, pale-faced, and said, "That road's been closed for years. No one goes down there. They say people don't come back." I didn't sleep that night, and when I checked my GPS history the next morning, there was no record of the route I'd taken. Story 3. It started like any other late-night drive. I was on my way home, the highway nearly empty except for a few distant headlights. The stillness of the night was oddly calming, with only the occasional hum of passing cars breaking the silence. Then I noticed it. A pair of headlights appeared in my rearview mirror, too close for comfort. I frowned, easing up on the gas to let them pass, but they didn't. They just stayed there, tailing me so closely I could see the outline of their car, a dark sedan, windows tinted. My annoyance turned to unease. Why weren't they passing me? I tried switching lanes, thinking maybe they were in a hurry and just hadn't gotten the chance. But no matter where I moved, they followed. My heart began to race as the realization set in. This wasn't random. The road ahead was empty, and the car behind me was keeping perfect pace. Finally, I'd had enough. I signaled, pulled over onto the shoulder, and threw the car into park. The other car slowed, its headlights still glaring in my mirrors, before coming to a stop a few feet behind me. I could feel my pulse pounding as I opened my door and stepped out. I stormed toward the car, ready to confront whoever was inside. But as I got closer, something stopped me in my tracks. The car was empty. The engine was off. No one was behind the wheel, no shadow in the seats, nothing. A cold chill ran down my spine as I stared at the car, my breath clouding in the cold night air. I turned to head back to my own car, trying to convince myself it was some kind of prank. That's when I heard it. A low, guttural growl echoed from behind me. I froze, my instincts screaming to run, but my body wouldn't listen. Slowly, I turned around. Standing in the middle of the road was something. Its silhouette was massive, hunched, with glowing red eyes locked on me. Its breath came out in visible puffs, matching the low rumble in its throat. It took a step forward, and my legs finally obeyed. I bolted back to my car, slamming the door and fumbling to start the engine. As I sped away, I glanced in the rearview mirror one last time. The dark sedan was back, tailing me again. This time, I didn't stop, and I never drove that road at night again.